Chapter 20, Layout Formatting. We are going to continue cascading style sheets. Last time we talked about cascading style sheets where we can format things like the background of a heading tag or a paragraph or an unordered list. We can change the background, we can change the font color or even the font size. But now let's go ahead and look at more about the boxes that they create when you're putting CSS around an object. And if you look at this illustration here, it tells you basically some of the attributes that you can have in your cascading style sheets. So on the inside here, you see that there's height and width. That's something that we already know. And that would be on the inside of the square. And then there's padding, and then there's a border around what we've seen so far on our objects, and then there's a margin. So basically we are already familiar with this red area here, this inner area, and then the white area is just the border. But new terms for you may be padding and margin, and it's really just a matter of remembering those things. And of course there's you can actually refer to margins so that it just takes care of all the margins of your box, or you can actually specify the right, the bottom, the left, and the top. So yeah, you can specify whichever one, and you can do that with the border. You can even do that with the padding. So you can specify which one or all of them. You can say padding and not specify the side, and it'll do it to all of them. So again, the inner area is height and width. Then we have your border around it. And inside the border is padding, and outside would be margin. So you can actually think of, well, margin, if you think of margin on a 8.5 and 11 printout of, maybe an essay, the margin is the space around the edges of the paper where the text does not cover. That's the margin. And the padding would basically be where the text is on the inside of that margin. So just kind of think of it that way. Okay. So many things that we can do. These are specifying the location of what you can do, but what exactly can you do? Many different things. The borders, you can actually change the, typically, or by default, it's solid, but you can also make a double line, a groove line, dotted lines, dash lines, so many other ones. And there's a table that I'll show you in a little bit with many more things you can do. And also know too, well, actually, if you look at these examples down here, you see that, so P1 is for this first paragraph, P2 is for the second paragraph, and P3 is for this third one. You see down here, there's paragraph tags, and then we've assigned classes to each one of those paragraphs. So here's 1, here's 2, here's 3. And we're actually specifying class 1, class 2, class 3. Okay, so in this first one, we have your regular solid line, and basically we didn't even have to do that because that's default, but they're just showing you or illustrating to you right here. You can change the width of the border to 5 pixels so that it's bigger, and it makes it more obvious, because if you think about, if you look at this one down here, it's dots, and the second one has a groove, but can you really tell? Not so much. But if you made the border width a little bit wider, you can really see the dots or the groove. And also note here is you can actually specify pixels, or you could even specify that it would just be medium. So just on a side note there. And it also shows here that not only can you do the width, but you can make it dotted and you can make it red. So now you have where you can color the borders as well. So this is the table of the different types of border style. And it doesn't really show you, but there's some really cool ones in there, like the inset and outset. But I would highly recommend that you just kind of change them just to see what they look like. And all you would have to do is change border style to something different. Okay, so margin and padding. Again, padding controls the space inside of your container. It's on the inside, and the textbook actually mentions like a padded room. If you have a padded room, it's helpful to have it padded on the inside and not on the outside. So that's another way of looking at it. Okay, so here are the same paragraphs from earlier. We have the solid, groove, and dotted, but we're actually adding padding to it. So as you can see, there's more space on the inside. That is the only thing that they've changed here. So here are the three same paragraphs as here, but these are much smaller because these do not have the padding. So if you go back here, you see that there's much more space on the inside of this box, and that's because of this padding attribute. Okay, and then as I mentioned earlier, there's a margin, and the margin would be on the outside of the square. So you can see that it's the same size because it still has the padding, but it also has margin, so you can see that these boxes are further away from each other because the padding is on the outside of the boxes. Okay, so this next part here is actually specifying which side. So this one here, we have padding left, and also notice that I didn't even mention earlier, but notice how this one says P1, P2, P3, and these are where it's assigning down here which class. Notice down here is that it just says P. It doesn't have 1, 2, or 3. So what that means is that it will be applied to all of the paragraphs. So these three, since they are paragraphs, it will be assigned to all of them. So, and this would be very helpful because when you do it this way, you're not repeating a line. So for example, this is the quicker way to do it, but the other way of doing it is actually putting this line padding left 10 on each one of these. So you would paste it here, here, and here. So, you know, that is more code that you're using. So it will take you more time, but also remember last time I mentioned there's processing time. So the computer will have to evaluate every line in the cascading style sheet and all the white space. So that will take, you know, it just takes more time for the page to render on your browser. So just be aware that not only is it important for you to save you time, but it's also important for your page load times. And of course, you know, now we're doing just one page of a HTML file, but this could be a cascading style sheet for a whole website, and that takes more time. Okay, so back to specifying size. So this is saying that all paragraphs should have a padding on the left of 10 pixels. So this is the left-hand side, and that's 10 pixels on all three of them. Then there's a margin bottom where there's 50 pixels. So underneath each one of these boxes, there's going to be a margin of 50 pixels. So that's that part. Oh yeah, and so in addition to just specifying one side, you can actually specify all the sides in one line. So you don't have to list padding left, padding top, padding right, padding left. You can actually just do one line with all the different padding specifications, and you would list them starting clockwise, starting with the top. So it would be top, right, bottom, left. So as you see in the code here, they actually specify padding top, and let me actually go back here. It's top right, bottom left. So top right, bottom left. And again, it's clockwise. So the top, right, bottom, and then left. So you don't actually have to say padding left, padding right, padding top. Just do it all in one line here. If you want it different, again, if you just wanted them all to be the same, well, then just specify it in that one line. All right. And then what we've already done before is doing background colors. So you can specify on each one of your boxes or all of your boxes at once a background color. And this points out that you can actually type in a specific color, green, but just remember that it has to be something that that the browsers will accept. So if you type in light green, will that work? If you put dark green, will that work? And sometimes, well, you just don't know unless you try, or you can look at the list of options, or you can just go by default with a hex color or a hex formatted color or an RGB color. So those are your options there. Okay, and so you can actually use images as well. Previously, we've just done colors as backgrounds, where you can use images as backgrounds too. You can, so many things you can do with the images. Well, first you would have to, it says we can, but you have to specify the image's location, because it won't know where your image would be. You can just list the image and it will try to pull it from whatever folder you are in at the time, or you would specify, okay, it's in another graphics folder. You can also specify where you want to place it on the page, whether or not you want it to repeat, and whether you want it to move or remain in place when you scroll. And as an FYI, by default or automatically, the images are repeated. So if you don't want it repeated, you just want to put no repeat. So there's just one image, and I'll show you what it looks like here. So if you want an image as a background, you would just do background : URL and just specify the file name. And remember, if you just specify the file name, this file has to be in the same folder as your HTML file. If you want all your images together to kind of keep things organized, you might want to make it in an image folder. So you would have to specify right before clouds that it's in the images folder. Okay, and this is the same line here. And here's the image here. It's big enough so you can't really tell that it is repeating, but it is repeating. And here is, and actually this bottom here is actually showing an image repeating. And this image is just so big that it covers the whole thing. Here's an example of an image that it's small enough so you can see that it is repeating. If you don't want it to repeat, you can just put no repeat at the end. Okay. Another thing that you can do is you can actually do gradients. And let me show you what the gradient looks like first. See how it starts with one color and then it just kind of turns into another color. So that's the gradient there, and you can do that a couple of different ways. These three lines here is basically using an image, because you have the background URL and then here's an image file. You're using an image to repeat it across the x-axis right here. And then here's specifying a background color. You can also use this WebKit that it mentions up here. Sorry about that. It mentioned this WebKit here, and basically that's like a list of functions. Like I mentioned earlier when we were talking about JavaScript, there are functions that are already there that do what we need to do, so you don't have to write the code. And that's basically what this WebKit is here. It already, and also notice that it has the open and close parentheses, just like regular functions or functions that we've seen before. So yeah, if you can actually use these WebKits here, and they're specifying the different browsers for each one of the gradients that it'll create. So here's the gradient here. And just like I mentioned earlier, this is where you specify the image, and this is where it's repeating across the x-axis. Okay. And let me go ahead and stop here, and I will continue after we do a couple of things. I'm going to stop here.